This is a recipe from Volume 3 of my cookbook series. It's copied from a dish that was prepared tableside originally because the last couple of stages are quite easy to throw together quickly. The added bonus of this recipe is that the spiced plum sauce can also be used as a syrup for a great cocktail. The recipe for that cocktail is in the middle of this video in the annotations. You'll also need champagne for both the chicken and the cocktail, so again the cocktail is convenient to make at the same time. I assembled the ingredients for making the plum sauce first. I've got 400 grams of plums. All I did is take the pits out of them. You don't really need to chop these up because they're going to cook for a long time and they'll break down anyway. 120 grams of sugar. I've got 15 grams of ginger here. You don't need to bother peeling it. I'm going to give this chop it up just before I add it in, but it's going to be strained anyway, so the peel, you don't need to worry about the peel. A whole teaspoon of whole cloves, the ketchup, and the water. And really, it couldn't be simpler. Put this in a pot, bring it up to a simmer. Here's all the ingredients, including the ketchup. Here's the whole cloves, and there's the ginger that I've chopped up very coarsely. Don't cut it up too fine. You actually want it to be coarse because if you cut it too fine, the flavor will evaporate too quickly. You want big pieces if it's going to cook a long time. I give it a little stir. Heat's on it. We'll wait till it comes up to a simmer. And after you bring it up to a rapid simmer like this, you turn the heat down a little bit, slow the simmer down, and keep it going for about an hour and a half. I'll show you what it looks like after a little while here. Here's what it looks like after about half an hour. Give it a stir once in a while, but you don't need to stir it constantly at all. Here's what it looks like after about an hour and 5 minutes. I've reduced the heat during this time down to 3. If you don't reduce the heat, the boiling will become too rapid. It'll get too hot and it'll actually start burning. So you do have to keep turning the heat down a little bit as it progresses. This is pretty thick and it's looking pretty good. I'm going to give it like maybe 5 more minutes and then we'll pass it through a sieve. And while it's still warm, don't wait till it cools off because it'll be really, really hard to get it through the sieve once it cools off. While it's still warm, rub it through the sieve, get as much through as you possibly can, of course. Now, I just measured this and it was a little bit underweight, so I'm going to add just a little bit of water to this for the sake of standardization. And here's where you add either the salt or the MSG. I think you know which one I'm going to add. And you stir it together, and now this should be around 250 grams of the finished sauce that we're ready to use this for making the chicken. And you can refrigerate this and keep this for several days if you want. You don't have to make the chicken right away, of course. You want to begin with a chicken breast that's already been trimmed of all of the ligaments and any other connective tissue that's going to be tough, and then cut it on the bias like this into fairly small pieces like this, thin slices. As I mentioned in the annotations here, I'm not using all of the chicken. I'm just doing a small amount to show you. There's some cornstarch. The exact amount really isn't that critical, and the cornstarch will kind of regulate itself because there's only so much that'll stick to the chicken and the rest will be left behind anyway. So you don't sweat it too much. Don't try to measure it out to the final last gram. This is fine. We're going to leave this to sit in the cornstarch for a little while before we begin heating the pan with the oil. I have a non-stick pan here. Chafing dish would be the traditional approach, but very few people have a heated chafing dish at home, so we'll just use a pan on the stove. A little bit of peanut oil. Give it a few seconds here to get hot. pan was already heated before I added the oil, by the way. I'm just waiting a few seconds for the oil itself to get hot. It doesn't have to get real hot. It just needs to get, above the boiling point of water, basically. So it will help protect the pan and also make sure that it doesn't, there's no sticking at all, even though it's a non-stick pan. And you turn the pieces over. Basically, you just want to get it to the point of where there's no pink left on the chicken. I still see some pink left here, so we're going to keep cooking this for another minute. Of course, turn the pieces over. The opposite side's never going to get rid of the pink. Well, not never, but it'll take a very long time to get rid of the pink if you don't flip it over. It's almost ready. Almost got rid of all the pink. The heat, by the way, right now is on 6 out of 10. Almost ready. I still see a little bit of pink on here. Not much. As soon as you get rid of the last of the pink, then you're ready to proceed. Okay. This is pretty good. It's only been 2 minutes, something like that. It cooks very quickly. Chafing dish, it might take 3 or 4 minutes because it's not as hot as the pan on the stove. Okay. Now we're going to add a proportionate amount of this sauce for the chicken. Toss it around until all the chicken is coated evenly and it's thickening up, which won't take very long because the sauce is already pretty thick to begin with. Okay, it's pretty close to being there right now. Now we're going to add the champagne. Make sure you pay attention to the footnotes in the annotations there regarding the champagne. Okay, and reduce this a little bit until we have a sauce. When the sauce is thick enough, then we're going to transfer it. I don't really have the right kind of proper hotel serving dish for this here, but you'll get the idea anyway. And then a few drops of sesame oil over the top. Don't go crazy though, because this is a powerful seasoning. You want a little bit over the top though. And then some of the scallions that we mixed. Now, you can use a fondue cup for this if you want, just like this. And then you can pass out little forks like this for people to help themselves to it. I'm very pleased to announce the release of Volume 3, The Focus on Food Chemistry. I want to clear up a few things about these 3 volumes. First, they all contain completely different information. There's no duplication, they're not revisions. When I wrote Volume 1, I had 2.5 years of YouTube videos to cover. People had been asking me for the printed list of ingredients for all of those dishes, and so I obliged. There are recipes with stepwise directions and many tips offered throughout, as well as an extensive history of Russian cuisine over the last 1,000 years, but Volume 1 is very different from Volume 2 and 3. In Volumes 2 and 3, I only had about 9 months of YouTube recipes to cover in each, so I was able to provide stepwise directions for everything. In Volume 2, I included a lot of additional information about cooking and some simple examples of flavor chemistry to set the stage for Volume 3. While Volume 2 hopefully got you thinking about some of the processes that go on in cooking and how flavors are expressed and sensed at the molecular level, the topic was painted with pretty broad strokes to make it easy to digest. Pun intended. Volume 3 is a milestone of the series, in which I have included an entire introductory course in food chemistry, which is why Volume 3 is about 70 pages longer than Volume 2. And if you just want the recipes, that's okay too. You don't have to read the first few chapters.
But if you've ever been curious about what influences tastes and flavors and the rationale for deciding cooking times and temperatures and why things taste different when they're combined in different ways, this book will answer many of those questions. It also paves the way for Volume 4, which will be next year. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link.
Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.